I am currently divorced from my ex Thomas of 30 years. We ended up seeing a lawyer to help with dividing stuff. Everything was pretty much wrapped up till he said he no longer wanted any part of our kids' lives. I didn't argue with him about it since I already know what it's like having a parent who doesn't want you around, or wants to be in your life. I asked what he wanted me to tell the kids and he just said, "Whatever you think is best, I don't care. I don't want to parent anymore." Everything was in agreement and signed with no fuss. A few weeks later I get a call from my ex-mill asking if we could meet each other. When I came over she broke down crying and begging to let my ex see his kids again. I was confused about what she meant because not once did he contact me after meeting the lawyer. She went on about how my ex said he really missed them and that I was just a petty B*TCH for taking full custody. Also that he was crying for days about it. I told her my version of events and she called it BS, saying her son wouldn't lie like that, especially not about his kids. Then I decided to call him in front of her. He didn't know she and I were meeting that day. I said, "Hey, has a soccer game in a few days," which he did, and I was wondering if you wanted to go? I know he'd really love it and be happy to see you. He instantly said no. I already said I'm not doing this anymore. I asked, "Well, how do you think this is going to affect Denise, his mom?" She is over the moon about them. He just said she loves me more than the kids, so I doubt this will be an issue for her. After a bit more talking we finally hung up. Ex-Mill was straight-faced and nodded at everything that just happened. She asked me to leave and said we would be in touch. Later that day I got a call from my ex saying how it's my fault he was kicked out of his mom's house, and possibly will be taken off her will. Also that none of his family members will talk to him because of what ex-Mill heard. He threw a lot of insults at me before I hung up, and now him and his mates keep calling and texting me. My friend is saying I shouldn't have said anything in the first place and I ruined his life. Yes, I plan to let Denise see the kids because I know she just wants to give them the world along with the rest of his family. I am a 17 years old female, and I live with my mom, stepdad, and stepsister and stepbrother. I lost my dad to cancer when I was 13 years old. We were very close and his death was a major loss in my life. I wasn't able to keep much of his belongings because of my stepdad's insecurities and lack of sympathy and respect for me, and my dad. It's sad to say that mom moved on relatively fast. My stepsister and I share a room together. My stepbrother has the bigger room because he's a man, and as a result me and my stepsister are always in conflict. She wants me out during the day as she uses the room as her art studio. She recently accused me of stealing her tools and convinced her dad to get a lock, so now I'm being forcefully locked out, and can't get in till after a huge argument and getting mom involved. My stepsister had an argument with her brother and ruined his gaming console when he was out. He came into the room quietly in the evening, stood by the door and asked me to bring him my stepsister's acrylic paint set. I asked if he got permission, he said yes, so I gave it to him and went back to study. At dinner, my stepsister came downstairs yelling that her brother had access to her room and ruined her paint set. There was a lot of yelling and arguing. Stepdad asked how my stepbrother walked into the room when it was supposed to be locked. My stepbrother admitted I helped him out and brought the paint set to high. My stepsister went off on me, called an accomplice, then ran upstairs and took the gift I prepared for my dad for Father's Day. I picked up flowers I planted from our small garden that I take care of by myself, and prepared a nice wooden letter-shaped pot, used my dad's first initial and filled it with the flowers I picked and decorated it with ribbons. It wasn't that good, but it was like a floral letter. I planned to visit his grave and put the gift there. She damaged it to pieces. It was completely ruined. I yelled at her and kept crying. Mom and stepdad gave her harsh punishment and thought it was fixable, but I was so done I called my uncle, who came and berated my mom and stepdad. Stepdad offered to fix it and punish my stepdaughter harder, but I packed my things to go with my uncle. My mom begged me to stay, but I refused and didn't respond when she kept calling saying she did nothing to deserve to be shunned by me and my uncle, who told the family about what happened. The family told mom not to come visit on Father's Day and are angry with her because I moved out over this. I have a cousin, Kat, who got married to Henry early this year. We weren't close as kids. She was pretty spoiled and would always brag about how much designer stuff she has. Be really mean to people under the guise of just trying to help, etc. Don't go out of our way to interact with one another, but I do see her at family events and whatnot, and we make small talk. I'm engaged to Chris, who is a software engineer. He's co-head of his department at work with 2 other people, not too long ago. Chris was telling me about how they had some new employees and one of them sounded really familiar. He told me the name and I realized it was Kat's husband. Also, he and Henry hadn't met face to face yet. Kat and Henry had a huge wedding. It was really nice, but all she did for months is brag about how amazing her wedding was. The wedding stuff's died down now, so recently she started going on about how wealthy her husband is and what a great lifestyle they have. One of my other aunts celebrated her 50th about a week ago. I went with Chris and Kat was there with Henry. We were chatting and Kat was saying how Henry has a fantastic new job that pays even more than his previous one. Henry chimed in and said that they were already planning to buy a new house. Kat asked what Chris does. I said he was an engineer like Henry and he has a good job too, but I'll admit I left out where he works on purpose. She smiled and nodded, then said it's fine. She understands that I'm embarrassed and want to keep it quiet. So that was pretty much the end of our conversation then. When we were leaving, she pulled me aside and told me to let her and Henry know if we needed help with the wedding. Obviously I knew what she meant and it was just another dig, but I said, "Bye," and left. Literally 2 days later, I get a DM from Kat and she's furious, well, as much as one can be through text. That I didn't tell them that Chris was one of Henry's bosses. Henry was shocked to see him in the office and Chris made a comment, "Tell Kat OP and me don't need help but thanks for offering." Henry's really embarrassed and so's Kat, and she said that we made them look bad on purpose and if she knew, she'd have never made those comments. It was my duty to tell her and Henry. Chris and I had a really good laugh over this, but she sent a text out to the family group chat we have saying how she was blindsided by me. A few others said that what we did was petty and wrong. I am a 19-year-old female. I have an estranged grandpa more or less. He's my dad's father, but my dad hardly had a relationship with him. I have 2 other siblings, one younger and one older. My grandma divorced my grandpa when my dad was only 10. So he lived with my grandma his whole life in a different state and didn't see him. When he got older he saw him a little more and my grandpa started coming around a little bit more as well. He'd stay for a week at a time and then go home. He was an old, bitter man to be honest. He never got remarried and lived his whole life in his coastal town with the same friends he'd had his whole life. He wasn't pleasant to be around and could hold grudges longer than anyone I've ever met. But regardless of this, he was filthy rich. He owned a successful business that he sold for $1 million. He retired after selling, but his house sits on an island as well as the biggest piece of land on the island. So it sold for well over $3 million. I was never close with my grandpa, but I took after his sister who is in right now and he adores her. He always told me that he was proud to see me follow in her footsteps. He died a few months ago. Since then, my family has been torn apart. He left everything to me. He essentially liquidated all of his assets and it ended up being close to $8 million. I was shocked. I didn't and still don't know what to do with the money, but I'm going to save it. My dad and stepmom as well as my siblings are hounding me to split the money with them. I just can't do it. My dad is an alcoholic who never said anything nice about his dad. Despite him being bitter, my grandpa actually bought my dad a $300,000 house. My dad would 100% drink away any money given to him. As far as my siblings, my brother has full financial support from my grandma as he is the favorite and he's very wasteful and ungrateful. He never talks to me and always is very mean to me when he does. My little sister is the only person I've actually considered. She's very young and that's really the only thing stopping me. Her mom is money-oriented and would take the money from her. So I'm waiting until she turns 18 and I offered to pay for her college. But now my family is telling me I'm unfair and the money doesn't belong to me and I'm not deserving of it. That I'm too young and I'll waste it on cars and clothes. I don't agree and now they're all threatening to cut me off and never speak to me. Or even sue me if I don't give them all a chunk of the money. I don't know what to do and I'm buckling under pressure here. I've already had 2 police officers out to my house because my dad is claiming I stole the money from him. Everything was through an attorney. I know I did nothing wrong legally, but morally,